To trope or not to trope? That is the question. And whether you choose to behold its merits, align its purpose, or disavow its petulance and codify its moroseness, one will be drawn for all time. Conversations will be had, and its sacred keeper, the one AF Stewart, may reside over this procedure, but make no mistake, it is you, the Horde, playing judge, jury, and executioner, and while civil tongues will prevail, the question remains, even if sullen by blood, is it time to answer the call to trope or not to trope?
Okay, welcome back to another episode of Trope or Not to Trope, and today's trope is Haunted by the Past. And our guest is Wayne Turmel. So I'm going to let him introduce himself, so take it away.
Hi, my name is Wayne Turmel. I am a Canadian expat now living in Las Vegas. I have written 7 novels. The newest one, The Deserter, is A Tale of the Foreign Legion, and it's out now. Very excited about that. And lovely to be back with Anita, except I didn't realize this was a blood sport we were playing tonight. That seems terribly intense.
Well, I think the only blood sport, the blood that we shed, is on the tropes and not the actual people. So
I was going to say it's way too early in the evening here on the West Coast to, I am not properly lubricated to have that kind of intense discussion.
of course, there's always mention of murder when I'm in a show anyway, but yeah.
Well, the most fun you can have is when there's a not zero chance you won't live to see the morning. But there you go.
Okay, and if you're over on Facebook, make sure you give us a star and all that sort of thing to be entered in the giveaway, where you got lots of prizes, which I can't remember what they are at the moment, but there's a ton of them. So definitely go over and give us a star if you're on Facebook. Okay, so as you said, we are, as I said,
one of us said it.
Yeah, one of us said it. We are doing Haunted by the Past, and actually both Wayne and I use this particular trope quite a bit. So, but I'm going to be arguing against Haunted by the Past, and Wayne's going to be arguing for it. So we'll get started now. And so my first point on this particular trope is that it's overdone a lot. It feels almost like every book has a character with a haunted past now. It's especially main characters, and like it's an obligation almost. And you've got some genres like fantasy or noir mystery. It's almost like a requirement. I mean, so it kind of gives me the idea, like, why can't minimally traumatized or well-adjusted people be the main character? Or so what do you have to say on that?
For the same reason, moderately traumatized and well-adjusted people don't become writers. There, I rest my case, Your Honor. I think it's because, you can get really artsy and say the past is prologue, but the bottom line is everybody has a motivation. Something motivates us to take action, and well-adjusted, normal human beings, unless something really horrible comes from the outside, tend not to find themselves in particularly dramatic situations. Normal people are boring. I hate to put that mildly. And so to me, the whole thing about the haunted past is, if I'm an actor, if I'm a method actor and I'm trying to understand why the character does something, their past is extremely relevant. Now, the one thing that I will agree with you wholeheartedly is, like all tropes, there's a lot of stuff that just gets overdone to the point of there are no surprises. It's seldom, everything is done in flashbacks, which I don't really. The two things that annoy me are constant flashbacks that are just so on the nose. And the other thing is when I'm trying to figure out the right way to explain this. You I know what it is. When the character suddenly halfway through Act 3 remembers everything.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's something, and it's a mystery, and it's a mystery to him or her, and it's a mystery to the audience, and we get little bits and pieces, and then suddenly, there's some traumatic incident, and suddenly it's all clear to me now.
The repressed memory syndrome.
Repressed memory syndrome, I don't have a lot of patience for. But I think if you're building a character, their backstory is absolutely critical to. I mean, why do they respond like they respond? Or more importantly, with Haunted by the Past stories, is why don't they respond the way that we expect them to respond?
That's a good point. It's also a good point about the normal people. Maybe they have a little more senses to actually get involved in this craziness too.
They generally don't find themselves in the kind of situations that particularly the likes of you and I tend to put them in.
Okay, so Haunted Past also a lot of times equals Deep Dark Secrets and Lies, and that often or inevitably leads to obvious plot complications, maybe a little too obvious sometimes. And if you're writing a romance, it generally leads to the third act breakup. So, I mean, and a lot of times the readers can see it coming and they ask, why can't the characters? So, how would you handle that?
Well, it depends what point of view you're using to write. Almost everything I've written, with the exception of The Deserter, is in first person. And as a result, the only person who really knows about the person's past is the person. So, the other characters are finding out about it as the reader is. Once you start to expand it, and even in The Deserter, it's extremely close first person. Like everything is on Gil and Gil's experience, and if he doesn't see it or experience it, neither does the reader. And I think that's one way to do it. The minute you become omniscient, it's really easy to just, blurt it out and be a little too on the nose with it sometimes. And it opens the way to, as you know, Bob, and all kinds of horrible things that are not, great writing.
Yes, the dreaded "as you know, Bob." That one should definitely be avoided. So, that's an interesting point, though, is that the point of view makes a difference on how you dole out the past. So, yeah, I get that. So, Haunted Past can be used and is often used if you don't pay attention to it as a cliched one-note personality shortcut. You have the stereotypes, the brooding warrior who really wants to belong, the tragic chosen one, which is pretty stereotypical these in fantasy. You've got the lone survivor of a tragedy, you've got the criminal going straight, and the author uses too much focus on the backstory and not enough character development. So, how do you avoid leaning on a haunted past as a crutch?
Well, apparently I don't. You have now completely explained my entire oeuvre of books, and there's nothing left. Which is not entirely true, but it's close enough to sting. How do you avoid it? I think that you need to be very conscious of how you dole out the information and what their response to it is. With The Deserter, I did something I've never done before, which is the character is, if not outright neurodivergent, certainly OCD. And he was in the army. He mustered out. His civilian life became a complete disordered mess, and he's rejoined the Foreign Legion in order to put a little structure on your life. And if your life is so messed up that trying to instill order in the middle of the Sahara Desert seems like a good plan, you probably have some things to work through. But I think it's how you dole out the information. Just as an example, I did this with Gil. It's really on the nose, but I didn't know what else to do. He has scars on his wrist from what was obviously a suicide attempt. But other than the fact that it happened, there was no description of when it happened, how it happened, what drove him to it. It is just there. And every once in a while, he sees the scar or they itch or whatever. And it's never really explained what he did to himself or why or when he did it. It's just there. And I think that's one way to do it without diving into having to explain everything that goes on.
But that's a realistic portrayal of someone who has tried to kill themselves, though, because they don't really talk about it. Maybe in therapy, but back in those days there was no therapy. So
well, and except for the very beginning of chapter 1, there is nobody from that part of his life that he interacts with. Everything is in the Legion, starting fresh, which is the whole point, is that desire for a fresh start. And yet the reminders are there. I think, it's so funny when you talk about this because everything assumes that you do it right. The trope can work if you do it right. If you don't do it right, it's very tropey and people go, oh, been there, done that. I've seen this movie.
Well, that just pretty much sums up what the show is about. We're trying to tell people how to do it
right. Well, there you go. You know that thing you do that you think sucks? Don't do that. Thank you. Good night.
Actually, I think we actually did say that once at the end of a show. It's like, don't do that. It's basically what we said.
Well, it's like going to the doctor. It hurts when I do this. And the doctor says, don't do that. It's good advice. As far as it goes.
Okay, so another variant of this stereotype is when you use the haunted past to do the bad boy or the bad girl character, and you lean on that stereotype, and yet somehow, even though they're a bad girl, bad boy, they're somehow irresistible to everybody. So how do you do the bad girl or the bad boy trope with the haunted past without making it seem ridiculous?
It's funny, as you were describing it, I flashed on something that a lot of male writers were doing about 8 or 9 years ago, and blessedly it seems to have passed. The fever has burst. For a while, every guy I know, with the exception of me, was writing a school shooter book. And it was, let's explain why this happened. And it treaded a really weird line between explanation and forgiveness, which I don't think most people wanted to cross. And if you were trying to justify or forgive that kind of behavior, people deservedly look askance at you. I think that it's fair to assume that there's a little Stockholm syndrome going on. I think what I try to remember when I'm writing the pasts of bad guys, and to be honest, bad guys are not my strong suit. But I want to give enough information that it seems reasonable that they would choose this course of action without either it becoming torture porn or or blatant justification. I mean, we all know people have had horrible things happen to them. I am going to go out on a limb and say you and I have had bad things happen to us that did not turn us into terrible people.
No, turned us
It
into writers.
No, it turned us into writers, and we create terrible people.
Yes, but then we kill them off. So
Yes, well, hurt people write about hurt people, is one way to look at it. But for everybody who has a horrible, and we can all choose the situation, right? Lost in the foster system, you know, betrayed by a lover. I don't know why Disney didn't do a movie for 30 years where somebody's mother didn't die before they were 10. But we all know people who've gone through that situation and not turned out evil. So why did that person turn out that way, right? It wasn't the fact that their mother died. It was how they were treated afterwards. It was who raised them after that. There's additional information. And it's really easy with the haunted by the past to just say, oh, my mother died when I was when I was young, and now I'm a wreck. Which is really lazy and, doesn't really explain that much.
No, and a lot of writers use it as a shortcut for morally gray characters as well as villains, which I don't like, because if you're going to have a morally gray character, then let him be morally gray.
I think that a little bit of, they're just a bad person.
Yeah.
Is acceptable. If you are a greedy, sneaky little liar, own it.
Yeah, I mean, and greedy, sneaky little liars actually can be good characters. Like if you've seen the movie The Mummy,
yes,
Benny is a fabulous character, and he is exactly that. He's a greedy, sneaky little liar, and we wouldn't trust him as far as we could throw him, but we love that character.
Yes.
And they did.
And we know nothing about Benny's backstory, by the way. He just is who he is.
Yeah, except that he was in, we assume, the Foreign Legion, because
right.
that they didn't actually come out and say that it was the Foreign Legion, but it looked enough like it. So
obligate, nameless desert army.
Yeah.
Military unit. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, but considering it had a whole bunch of different countries attached to it, including America, everyone just assumed it was the Foreign Legion for that movie.
Well, that is the beauty of the Foreign Legion, because all military stories are found family, right? If you look at World War II stories, there's the Nebush from Brooklyn, there's the hard-bitten sergeant who's seen it all, there's, the corn-fed kid from the Midwest. Well, all military stories ultimately have that dynamic. The Foreign Legion is the coolest because you've got the international component to it as well, which either lets you dig into stuff or just roll naked around in your stereotypes, depending on how you want to handle it.
Yeah. And they all have haunted past stories too.
Well, the Legion is the ultimate haunted past because it's one of the few institutions that explicitly or implicitly, and it was never as explicit as we thought it was, implicitly was, join us, change your name, and get a fresh start.
Yeah.
Not a lot of institutions are built on that premise.
Yeah. We won't ask any questions, just fight for us. It's basically what they said.
I mean, the power of the anonymous, which is, you give them a fake name and that becomes your name, deal with it, is really powerful. And it is small r romantic in terms of character and structure and stuff. So it's a whole, it's a whole genre built around the haunted past.
Okay, apparently Joe has a theory about Rose and Gil and that they know each other in the past. So,
wow. I wrote both those characters, and I don't know that to be true.
well, you now have fan canon, so congratulations.
Yeah, all right, fanfic. I've always wanted people to write fanfic for me, so this is exciting. I'm very excited. I can't wait to see what you do with it, Joe.
Okay, so another thing that kind of annoys me sometimes about the haunted past characters, especially if you're doing crime books, is that the haunted cast character is always paired with the well-adjusted normal character, like the buddy cop shows or that sort of thing. And it's like they're always at odds, and then but will they become friends? Of course they will. And will we roll our eyes at it because it's badly done? Of course we will. So how would you go about doing putting a haunted past character in with a partnership?
Boy, I mean, what you have just said assumes the other person doesn't have a haunted past of their own. Because everybody brings their baggage to a relationship, and it's really easy. And I think about Lethal Weapon. The Danny Glover character, basically as emotional as he gets until they kidnap his family, is I'm getting too old for this. Right? It's like, that's the most interesting thing about him is he's 2 weeks from retirement. I think that in a perfect world, everybody has a past and it all plays on how they respond. Why are they trying so hard to be nice? Right? Why are they tolerating this idiot's behavior? There maybe is a reason for that, right? Maybe they've got a brother who had an addiction problem and they've seen this movie, or something else that explains it. Just the fact that I'm investing all my writerly stuff in this one character and giving him the past and the backstory, and then this other person is a convenient foil, but isn't terribly interesting on their own, is a real easy trap to fall into.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, though, that the well-adjusted character really isn't well-adjusted. You find that out later is the twist in the book. Now, that would be interesting.
See, that's the thing, is you have to think about. It's funny, in film, you get some help with this, because I'm sure Danny Glover did plenty of character work thinking about his character before he got in front of the camera. And yes, Shane Black wrote the script, but Danny Glover put something on top of it, and then the director put something else on top of it. And it's a collaborative thing. When you're writing a book, for the most part, it's just you. And are you willing to do a little investment in who are these people up front to help give you a sense of that? Or as so many writers do, and I've been guilty of this, you're so invested in your main character that everybody else simply exists for that character to bounce off of.
Yeah, you do have to fill out all the side characters. Actually, in my nautical fantasy book, I actually preferred the side character a little to the main character.
That was actually the most fun about the Johnny Lycan series, the Werewolf PI series, is the side characters are really, really good, he says modestly. They all have really interesting stories and pasts that you may or may not get into, but it's clear that they have them, and they respond in ways that are true to the little bit that we know about them.
Yeah. That's like with my side character I was talking about. He definitely does have a past because he doesn't really fit the rest of the crew. Like he's very
Right.
like I modeled him on Ewan Griffith's portrayal of Horatio Hornblower.
Right.
So he's very like what you'd think of a typical sort of a British 18th century, 17th century sailor, right?
Yeah.
Very spick and span, orderly, keep the ship going character. But the rest of them are not at all. And I mean, and the captain himself, I mean, he's literally a god. So I mean, so so it's interesting, but he does have a past. You don't really get to see it in the book, but I know the past. And he may get a side
Well,
book at one point.
exactly. And it's so funny because with backstory, I have to be very careful how I say this because I am not torching anybody. Backstory is like the research you do for your world building, especially in historical fiction. There's so much information that you find, and if you put it all out there, it slows the story.
Definitely.
And I think it's the same thing with backstory. We as writers need, if somebody says, what happened to him that happened, or why didn't he do that in this circumstance, we have to be able to answer that question. But we don't necessarily have to put everything on the page.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem with flashbacks with the haunted past, is that there's a tendency to go down a rabbit hole and explain everything in the flashback, which doesn't necessarily move the story forward.
No, I use flashbacks with another one of my haunted past characters, but I only gave the flashback just enough of the information she needed to get to the next point in the story.
But that's the thing, right? That's what you need to do, is you need to play fair with the reader. You need to give them enough information, but you have to remember that your A story is the plot of the book.
Yeah, definitely. But and the flashbacks were all magical in nature anyway, so she wasn't actually remembering anything. She was just getting sucked in by these magical things. So it was like I don't want to remember this, but tough.
At least it wasn't a dream.
Oh no, don't do the I've done the dreams, but not for memories or flashbacks. I've done the dreams just to freak the characters out. It's like
I only did one dream, and it was at the start. It was the prologue, which is also something you're not supposed to do, apparently. But it was the prologue for Acra's Orphans, which was the sequel to Acra's Bastard. And it was, if you're just picking up this book, here's what you need to know. It's just enough that you can now understand the rest of the book, right? So it caught up what happened in book one and positioned it without dragging it down, I think. But I was very careful not to have Luca dwell on all of that.
Yeah, that's tough. That's always the problem when you're doing sequels. Are you how much do you let the readers know from book one to book two?
Which is why I'm done with them, by the way. For the foreseeable future, I am sequeled out. I'm just not playing that game.
Okay, so you touched on this a little bit earlier, that haunted past backstories can often read as been there, done that, recycled tragedy, you've seen it all, the orphans, the betrayal, the guilt, the abandonment. So how do you keep it fresh?
I think I think a lot of it depends on genre, because romance writers expect certain things, and if you don't give it to them, you will pay.
Yeah, depending on the subgenre, they change from subgenre to subgenre.
Exactly. The same is true of sci-fi, right? Certain sci-fi tropes thou shalt not mess with, and they're okay with them being crossing from trope to cliche. A lot of readers are kind of okay with that. I think whenever for me, because clearly all you young writers out there want to be like me when you grow up and just as wildly successful. I think for me, whenever I come up with a plot point or I come up with an idea, I stop and go, why? Why is that what I'm going to do? And has it been done before, or is there a different way to do it? Or can we do this just a little bit differently than people expect? And that's something I make myself do. As I'm plotting, I really only plot in 3-chapter blocks. When I start the book, I kind of know where I'm starting. I know a couple of set pieces, and here's where I'm going to end. But then I plot in 3-chapter pieces. So a lot of times I find myself doing a Wile E. Coyote where I'm running off the cliff and I don't, and so when I find myself in one of those things where I need to drop a plot point or a MacGuffin or something in there, it's always, okay, that's a good first shot. It's the first thing you thought of. What else could you do? Or how could you do that differently than you've seen? And you need to watch for it. Because especially, and most of us write in genres that we're a fan of, it's really easy to kind of go on autopilot.
Mm.
And just, well, because that's what you do in this type of book is not a great answer. It's sometimes the answer, but I'm not sure it's a great one.
Yeah, I like that idea of putting down the first idea and then, pulling back a little bit and taking a wider view, as it were, for it. Yeah. So, another thing I don't like sometimes with haunted past characters is that the haunted past is used as an excuse for bad or questionable behavior towards the
Right.
other characters. It's like, oh, don't mind his rudeness. He's being jerk. He's such a tragedy. He has such a tragic past. We have to feel sorry for him, no matter how much of a jerk he is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this goes back to what I said earlier. Lots of people have had terrible things to them, and they are not screaming a-holes.
Mm. But I mean, even if you want to make him a screaming a-hole, what I don't understand is why don't you have one of the other characters punch him in the face?
I
That's
am
what
I
I
am a
want to
big
see.
fan of that.
Yeah, it's like, make the character an a-hole if you want to. Just have someone punch him in the face for it once in a while, So, I mean, that would, to me, it would make it more realistic instead of just having this character behave so badly and everybody just excuse it. So,
Oh, absolutely.
Other than that, I've just given you the answer to it. Do you have any other suggestions for not making the characters
Just
objectionable?
a second. When in doubt, punch in face.
Yeah,
Good.
well, that's usually my go-to is when I don't do something violent to the characters.
No, I think because that gets into the motivation of the other person, right? Why are they letting that person get away with it? Why are they being so patient with this person? Do they clearly they know the person's haunted past, or they wouldn't put up with it, right? They've kind of, well, I'm willing to give this person some grace because this happened, and I know this happened, and so his behavior isn't a mystery to me. It's interesting when you say that, because punching them in the face is a perfectly valid response to a male character. You can't necessarily treat a female character that way.
Now that is a good point. Yeah, there's a bit of a. I'm not going to say an unreasonable double standard, but it is kind of a
It
double
does
standard.
exist.
Yeah.
It certainly is.
I
It's
mean,
like
even
you can kill the sidekick, but for God's sake, don't hurt the dog.
yeah.
Right?
Oh, don't ever hurt the dog. You'll never hear the end of it if you hurt the dog.
Yeah, I think that you have to, if somebody is responding, if a character is responding a certain way to your main character and they know that person's past, or they know enough of it to be willing to excuse it, why are they willing to excuse it, right? Is that would a reasonable person respond in that way?
Now that is interesting, because an interesting idea, because the person who's responding like that might have an ulterior motive.
They might have an ulterior motive. They might have somebody in their past who's had a similar type of thing. They might be so desperate for affection and attention that they're willing to tolerate it. There's lots of stuff. But what you're doing at that point is fleshing out your secondary characters.
Yeah.
They are not just the long-suffering wife, right?
Yeah, but you'd have to, I would think, make that clear, and as the character, for the character, so that she doesn't come, or they or he or whatever, come across as just a little milquetoast fool.
Yeah, the boring long-suffering boyfriend or girlfriend, the parent who's just with them the whole way all the time. No, there's other stuff going on there. And there's a reason they're putting up with that character's BS. It might be an overinflated sense of empathy. It might be, I'm a really good person and therefore I'm willing to be the martyr. I mean, there's valid reasons, but it's like everything else. You have to have a reason. Okay, I'm about to say something that I cannot believe is spilling out of my head, because I was a pretty good student in the Canadian public school system, with the exception of math. And math used to drive me crazy. And the thing that drove me the craziest is show your work. I got the answer. Why do you care how I got it? I got the right answer. Why do I have to show my work? And I've realized at this tender age of my life that it prepares you for a lot of things. It certainly prepares you for relationships. When the person you're in a relationship with says something completely ridiculous, show your work. Like, how did you get from there to there? And it's the same thing when you're writing characters. If the character does something, particularly something that is not what the reader might have done, you have to show your work a little bit. You don't have to connect every dot, but you got to show your work a little. At least give us a sense of, is this person legitimately empathetic? Are they just playing the martyr? Do they have an alternative agenda? At least give us that much.
Yeah, definitely. So another thing that kind of annoys me a little bit about the haunted past is that some authors, they kind of use it to justify a character being stoic or quiet or antisocial, but it's like that sort of behavior needs to be justified because it's somehow bad or wrong, which I don't like exactly. I mean, why can't characters just be quiet or be soft-spoken or not want to hang out with people without having a bad past?
Because we naturally fear introverts. Oh yeah, I need more. Okay. Here's the thing, right? If you ask somebody to explain an extrovert, they will tell you, oh, they're outgoing, they're the life of the party, they're this, they're that. Describe an introvert. Quiet, keeps to themselves, doesn't bother anybody, which is the literal description everybody has ever given of a serial killer.
Yeah, that's just what I was thinking.
We immediately ascribe motives to people who behave differently than we do. And since 75% of the population are extroverts on the scale, people that are quiet, the stoic, never says anything, just takes it kind of person is suspect. And there's How did they get that way? Why do they do that when everybody else squawks and whines and complains?
Well, that is an interesting take on it. I never thought about it quite like that. That's actually interesting. I don't necessarily think you need a haunted past to justify it,
But there's a reason, right?
yeah.
There is a reason that you do that. Maybe, your father was a big old whiner, complainer, loser, and you lost all respect for him. And so you would rather take the slings and arrows than expose yourself to having people think that of you.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, yeah, giving them a reason, just not necessarily a haunted past reason.
Yeah, it
is-
doesn't have to be haunted, but it's funny. I still have to do the dreaded day job. I could retire tomorrow if I die Thursday. And one thing that I learned when I left show business and got into the real world is that every decision, no matter how harebrained, no matter how stupid you think the company's decision was, somebody thought it was a good idea and at some point defended it to the point that the decision got made.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a scary thought, but anyway.
It is a scary thought, but that actually has saved my sanity through the years, because rather than just go, oh, why did they make that decision? They're idiots. No, they're perfectly intelligent, capable, functional humans. But there was a set of data and circumstances where that seemed like the right answer at the time.
Yeah, that seems like the right answer. So it's been probably the reasoning for a lot of things in this world.
Most people do not make bad choices because they want to make a bad choice. They don't make bad choices because they don't care. They make bad choices because their circumstances up to that point, their experience, their worldview, the information that they possess says that this is the right move, right? To get to the haunted past thing, shutting up and taking violence against yourself and taking a beating and choosing not to fight back comes from something. Right? Maybe it came from, I tried fighting back once and it damn near killed me. Maybe it's, I tried fighting back once and I damn near killed another person and I didn't want to do that. There's a reason you make that decision.
Yeah.
It may be based on completely false information. It may be based on bad data, but there's a reason that decision gets made. Now, when we're talking about haunted by the past, the number one thing that will expose future behavior is past behavior. If you go in for a job interview, a good job interviewer is not going to ask, do you have the skills to do this? They're going to say, if this happened based on your experience, what would you do? Right? Because your experience in the past is darn sure more of an indicator of what you're going to do next than what you think you should do.
Yeah, that's true.
I cannot believe that I have managed to invoke math class, HR, and almost anything else in this conversation, but I guess no experience is wasted, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the point of good writing, though, is that you do bring in experiences, even math class, apparently. But there's another thing that bothers me sometimes about haunted past characters, especially if you've got a romantic subplot in the book. The haunted past characters are portrayed as needing saving, especially by the love interest. So,
oh yeah.
So how would you handle a romantic subplot with a haunted past characters without going to the obvious and he needs or she needs saving?
You know, the secret to a happy ending is knowing when to yell cut. And if you think about relationships, you know, my favorite thing is, you know, my favorite quote about relationships is, remember, every relationship that doesn't end in divorce ends in death. That at some point it's going to end, but what happens when the movie finishes, right? And when you save somebody from themselves, I've seen enough relationships where somebody thought they could save somebody and they thought they could be the person they needed, and it turned into a codependent nightmare. Or the person who's doing the saving has this inflated sense of their own self-worth, which ultimately is not a positive thing. To me, and you know, I'm lucky, my bride and I have been together 35 years this year. Good God. And one thing, my first marriage did not go so swell because I was the one trying to save her. This time I married somebody a little older than I am who was a completed product. And I realized that I can help her do certain things. She helps me do certain things, but it works together and it's mutual. It's not just one-sided, and that makes for a much saner, happier, able to function relationship. And, you know, I always think when I see romantic things, yeah, and what happens 5 years from now, right? What's this couple going to look like when they're old and gray? And I think you kind of have to take that into account. There's something romantic about being the one who saves them, but it seldom works out real well in real life. And doesn't that sound cynical and awful?
So avoid the saving romantic subplot, or you turn it into a toxic romance?
No, I think just, I mean, those are two very fine options. If we're being honest, those are two very fine options. But I think, and again, you know, if it's a romance and everybody knows it's a romance, right? It's a rom-com, and you know, they end at the altar, or they end with the kiss, or they whatever, and everybody's fine with that.
But I still think you could still give the poor haunted past guy some therapy on the way.
I think they need something. They need therapy. They need catharsis. They need something. And both parties need to bring something to the table. You know, the noble girlfriend who sacrifices everything to, as good as it gets. As much as I love Helen Hunt and Nicholson is Nicholson and all of that stuff, there is a moment where Helen Hunt is dealing with her mother that almost makes sense of the fact that this younger, incredibly patient woman is putting up with his nonsense. It's like there's almost enough there where I understand. I don't entirely get it. That movie bothers me a little. She's basically condemned herself to a life of worrying where she puts the fork. But I kind of get that she's got this rescue thing that she gets from her mother. And so, okay, I'll buy it. It would be really easy for that just to become a really, really horrible relationship. Instead, it's kind of endearing.
Yeah. I don't, those kinds of relationships generally don't last, though.
Well, again,
I mean, they're good for a movie.
When do you fade to black?
Maybe a romance book, but yeah.
When do you fade to black, right?
Mm,
And let's face it, neither you nor I writes romance.
this is true. But yeah, I do read a little romance though, and it depends on with that particular trope how it's done. Like if there's some kind of sense of feeling like they're going to work through it together, right?
Yes.
Then I'll buy into it. If it's just like she's just sort of like saving
Well,
him, it's like a codependent one way sort of a thing, like codependency. Then no, it I don't buy it.
exactly.
So maybe that's the secret. Don't make your haunted past relationships codependent.
Unless that's the point of the story.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's a perfectly valid story. But make sure it's the one you're writing.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so another thing that I find sometimes with the haunted past is that authors they build it up, but then they don't pull the trigger on it, and the haunted past isn't quite as haunted as it should be.
I think the haunted past needs to be 20% worse than the average reader's experience. How's that for a formula? Because if most of your readers are going, yeah, that happened to me and I didn't become a serial killer, then it's not that haunted, and it clearly wasn't enough of a motivator to make it resonate.
Yeah, I'm sure all those lovely data-driven authors just love to hear that formula, though.
Yes, and somewhere AI is busy putting that in an algorithm somewhere, and now I am responsible for it, and God forgive me.
Yeah, well, who knows? Maybe it'll actually improve the AI writing abilities.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that plagiarizing me is not the secret to success.
I don't think there is any secret to success with AI, but that's entirely different
Again,
conversation.
not the right beverages to have that conversation in any depth.
Okay, so there's also another haunted past thing that kind of bothers me, and it's the tearful confession of the haunted past where it all comes out and it spills out. But it can be very, very melodramatic and very overdone, to the point of almost being annoying sometimes. And then you've got the opposite effect of that where they refuse to share to the point of it actually causing issues. So, how do you balance that?
Well, as a cishet white man, I will tell you that not spilling everything out and keeping it in until the whole thing cracks is the way we function. So I'm okay with that. That's a perfectly valid coping mechanism. Thank you. I think that the tearful confession is great. What makes me crazy with the tearful confession is when you're saying it for the first time and you perfectly describe what happened and how it affected you and all that, and nobody does that on the first therapy session.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to have that tearful, there are still going to be things that aren't said. There are going to be things that are exaggerated in your mind beyond what they were in the real world. It's going to be messy and awkward and not use complete sentences, and it's tough to write, but it's actually easier to act it out, I think, than it is to write it. But I don't think the light appears on the road to Damascus and you perfectly encapsulate 40 years of your life in one tearful confession. I don't think it works that way. And that's when eyes roll.
Yeah. So your solution would be to sort of dole it out in bits and pieces.
I think dole it out in bits and pieces, and when the dam does burst, it's not in well-written, well-constructed, grammatically correct sentences.
Yeah, definitely.
Because, I mean, first of all, dialogue doesn't work like that anyway. And it particularly doesn't work when emotion is heightened.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, also, well, this will be our last one. The haunted past as a lazy plot device, where you use the haunted past as a sort of last minute thing to ruin everything, or some dark, mysterious figure comes out of the past and kills off the wife or kills off the whatever. So that's just a little cliche for me. So how would you do that
Well,
better?
I think the worst example of that is all of a sudden it's a Deus Ex Machina thing that happens where it's like, oh, all of a sudden in, chapter 42, that mysterious guy is your father. Or, it's, if it's all building up to that, that's fine. But it's really easy to just kind of lay that on there. And the other one that really makes me, oh, you thought that was such and such? No, it was really this circumstance. So now you no longer have to be the tortured a-hole you've been the entire book.
Yeah, that's just a cheat. That one. I'm
Well,
sorry.
of course it's a cheat. But see, this is the thing with all these tropes. Done well, they can work and people go with it. And, done poorly, eyes roll and people go, "Ay." And this is how people get turned off of genres. When I'm watching a movie or reading a book, and somebody, I don't know who, said this about writing, that the audience will give you one or two things that they are prepared to just go with. Right? There is a magic system that uses moonlight. Okay, cool. There is a magic system that uses moonlight and it affects this type of person more than another. Okay, good. I understand what is going on with the book. At some point, I have this, oh, come on moment. And the best example I can think of is the movie North by Northwest, which everybody says it's Hitchcock's magnum opus, and it's this wonderful movie, and oh my God, how can you not love this movie? And I'm okay with Cary Grant getting on a train to run away from being accused of murder. I'm okay with the woman just conveniently appearing everywhere. But crop duster is a really terrible way to try to kill somebody, and there is no house on the top of Mount Rushmore.
No,
so at this point, any reality, it just takes me out of the story, and I just don't care anymore. This is a stupid story, and I can't wait for it to be over.
Yeah, I have to agree. Crop duster is a terrible way to kill someone. I mean, first of all, you're never going to get near the person to kill them with the actual plane, like to hit them, because that will crash the plane, and you'll be dead too, or injured. And if you're shooting at them from the plane, that's just bad aiming.
And the worst thing you can do is get in the middle of the road and run in a straight line. See, you feel my pain, Anita. This is important. And so the point of this, to make it relevant to this, is I am willing to give people tropes until it reaches the point of, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Right? It's one too many, or it's way too blatant, or it's not even given an interesting twist, and then I'm out.
Yeah, it's like all those action movies where they throw away the gun just because it's out of bullets. That bothers me because a gun is a perfectly good club if you turn it upside down and hold it by the barrel.
Well, you can
And
get
it's still
into.
a good weapon. Why?
It's
And
like
if you find more bullets, it's a better weapon.
I am willing to bet if I'm walking away from a car crash and the car explodes, I'm probably going to look behind me to see
Well,
what happened.
you're technically going to be dead from the shock wave, but I'm not going to quibble.
I would at least go, what the hell was that? Right? So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if you have a gun, even if you're out of bullets, don't throw it away. And or the gun jams. That's the other one. They've got one of those semi-automatic guns or whatever, and it jams. Or the other gun. You can always unjam the gun, right, people? And keep on using it. I mean, maybe not at this particular time when the other people are shooting at you, but you could do it later if you escape.
Okay. Since we're venting,
Yeah.
I love spy movies.
Hmm.
And somebody once said that all good spy movies are basically travelogues, right? Which I am totally okay with. But why does the hero get in a car and instinctively know where every side alley and street is? My wife can't get from here to the supermarket without getting lost.
Yeah.
I'm in a city I've never been in before, and I know exactly which exit to take.
Yet somehow they
During a car chase.
inevitably drive the car down the widest staircase that they can that's in the city too. It's like, I mean, how
And
did
they
they
always
find?
know where the farmer's market is.
Yeah. And then they drive. Whoops! Then they drive right through it. Everybody jumps out of the way. It's like, no, you would not actually be able to get out of the way of a car probably speeding at you like that.
Yes. Anyway.
But yeah, okay. So we talked about Haunted Past and then ended on venting about action and spy movies. So this was a pretty good show, I think.
Well, it actually makes sense because the line between trope and cliche is. How's this for a wrap up? This is really good. The line between trope and cliche is really blurry, but you know when you've crossed it.
Oh yeah, you definitely know when you crossed
and for
it.
sure your readers know.
Yeah. Okay, so on that lovely note, we will end the episode, and I'd like to thank you for being a guest. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Always a pleasure talking to you, Anita. The fact that you keep asking me back and letting me blather is one of the great mysteries, but I'm glad it's true.
Okay, and remember, it's always time to go indie now. Bye, guys.